Hey everyone, Chaplain Anderson here, one of the staff pastors at Agape Humphreys, also the chaplain at 3rd and Maya. Just want to bring a quick little word thought for the day for you. Coming from Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 7, says, "Blessed with spiritual security is the one who believes, trusts in, and relies on the Lord, and whose hope and confident expectation is the Lord." It's from Jeremiah 17, verse 7. Jeremiah 17, verses 1 through 8, is God's message through the words of the prophet Jeremiah. It's a warning for us not to lose sight of living each day in an awareness of being in dependence on God. In general, it contains the truth that there are only really two types of people: those who depend on human strength and those who depend on the living God. He makes it clear that we cannot look to both as our supreme basis of trust. We'll either put our hope in the failing promises and finite power of people, or we look to faith beyond human capability to the sovereign person and satisfying promises of God. We're sustained alone by God's providence and grace. We'll expect help from others, so far as God enables them to help us, but we must rest our total trust and confidence in God alone. When we make humanity the basis for our confidence, we'll experience rejection and disappointment time and again and again. At the same time, we also fracture our relationship with God. But when God becomes our ultimate source of confidence, we are never let down. There are three brief observations about the truths from this text. First, in verse 5, a person who depends on human strength and possesses no spiritual accountability to God is what the prophet says, cursed, or literally translated, miserable. This person places attributes reserved only for God and puts them on mankind. His or her confidence is in the wisdom and power and faithfulness of humanity instead of God. And in verse 6, a person who does possess individual spiritual faith in God, yet trusts in their own righteousness and strength, is, he says, like a shrub in a parched desert. This person looks the part on the outside, but is devoid of spiritual life and vitality on the inside. They're spiritually dry and think they can do well enough on their own without the regular, abiding grace of Christ. This person does not, in fact, depend on God. They lack the spiritual stamina to weather the storms of life. When we come to verse 7, the third person, the one blessed with spiritual security. This is the person who not only believes, but trusts in and relies on the Lord. This person's abiding hope and confident expectation is in the Lord. This person flourishes in the drought. When the heat of life gets hot, this person remains cool and calm. This person is not anxious, but is fixed in God's peace throughout the course of the trial. This person's soul is watered by constant contact and devotion to God. This requires us to ask the difficult question: which person am I? Too many times we find ourselves depending on ourselves, our own thoughts, our own interpretations, our own reactions, feelings, our gut instinct. We ought to want to always be the tree planted by living water, as Scripture says. In the New Testament, Jesus calls his disciples to this way of living in John chapter 15. It's the way of abiding. Jesus describes abiding as remaining connected to him as a branch of grapes remains connected to the vine. The fruit is utterly dependent upon the nutrients passed through the vine. And it does so by a constant and steadfast connection. Abiding is the same as the tree planted next to the water. Its leaves are always green because its deep roots in constant contact with the life-giving water. So, how well are you abiding today?